Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for signing in tonight for our Wellness Wednesday webinar series with our topic tonight of diet and physical activity. My name is Eric Williams. I am Regional Outreach Manager for the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota for the West Metro, and I'll be hosting tonight. We're lucky enough to have Nate Hendrickson here as our guest speaker, who will be speaking later on. But I am going to start sharing our PowerPoint to get right into it. Okay, so this is diet and physical activity. Before we get into a lot of detail, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. Tonight we are going until 7:30, so about 75 minutes for our length. For bandwidth, it works best if you are just focused on this one activity, just internet-wise, to make sure that your experience and audio isn't slowed down or laggy or anything like that. We will be sending out a certificate of attendance to all the participants who sign in tonight, just showing that you were here for the webinar. And we are recording this as well, and that recording will be made available on our website if you are interested in listening back or passing it along to family or friends or someone who you think would benefit from the information. And you can ask questions. We will have time at the end of the webinar to ask questions to Nate, our guest speaker. And to do that, you'll see on the bottom of your screen the Q&A icon. And so just click that and open it up, and you can type in your questions to push send. Put those questions in at any point during the webinar, and we will get to them at the end. Okay, so our objectives for the webinar tonight is we want to increase our knowledge of how epilepsy and seizures interact with diet and physical activity. We want to learn the importance of a healthy diet and regular physical activity. Increase your understanding of the impact of movement on your day-to-day life, and gain information about building, maintaining, or reestablishing your fitness goals. So a little bit about epilepsy before we get into diet and physical activity specifics. Close to 50 million people around the world are diagnosed with epilepsy. In the US, it's about 1.2% of the population, so just over 3 million people. Nearly 500,000 children under the age of 18 are diagnosed with epilepsy, and it's nearly 1 million people over the age of 55. So it is a little more skewed to the end of the age range. And the most important thing for prevalence to know is that 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy at some point in their lifetime. And that can happen when the day that you are born, when you're 10 years old, 15, 20, 30, 80, 90. It can happen at any point in your life. So what is epilepsy itself? Epilepsy is a neurological condition, meaning it's happening in the brain, characterized by unprovoked recurrent seizures. So unprovoked, meaning that there is not a specific cause for why this seizure is starting, and recurrent, meaning that the seizures will happen more than once or are likely to happen more than once. Some people may refer to their epilepsy as a seizure disorder or seizure condition, and that is just personal preference, but really they all mean the same thing. And a seizure is a brief and sudden uncontrolled electrical activity in the brain that kind of builds up or overloads or malfunctions, and that causes the seizure. So seizures can occur with other conditions. 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy at some point in their life, but 1 in 10 people will have a seizure at some point in their life. So those other conditions that could cause a seizure could be a high fever, an infection, drug or alcohol use, maybe something related to a blood sugar emergency with somebody who has diabetes. And those seizures aren't epileptic in nature because there actually is a cause that's leading to that seizure to happen. But seizures, you can see our brain lighting up the different sections in the picture here. Depending on where in the brain the seizure is located, that's going to make a seizure look different than one that is happening on the opposite side of the brain, or one that is happening throughout the entire brain. And so based on where in the brain they're happening, there are actually over 40 different types of seizures that somebody may have if they have epilepsy, or one of those 1 in 10 seizures that might happen to someone over the course of their life. So basically, epilepsy is very unique to each person that has it, and you're not able to just put someone who has epilepsy in a box and know exactly what it looks like for them. It's individualized for each person. So now to get into, or before we get into diet and physical activity information, we want to start with a poll to just figure out kind of who here is in the audience, who are you representing, and so forth. So the first question here is, who are you hoping to support with this information about diet and physical activity? So you can select as many as is applicable. Is it your children? Is it your parents, yourself, your community or coworkers? And then second, you can choose what best describes your goals tonight. Are you hoping to build a foundation of knowledge? You want more information about healthy habits? You want information on maintaining healthy habits or reestablishing your healthy habits? So we'll just let this be open for a little bit as the audience is voting in, and then I'll put up the results in just a few seconds. All right, we're getting close to 100% of the audience voting, so just a few more seconds, last call. Okay, all right, I'm gonna end the polling and share the results. So it looks like about 47, so almost half of the audience are here trying to learn to support their children. About half are here to support themselves, and 7% for your community or your coworkers. And then for goals tonight, looks like 80% of the audience is looking to build a foundation of knowledge. 40% is looking to build healthy habits. And you'll see these percentages because you could choose multiple options. It's not going to add up to 100 perfectly, but another 40% want information on maintaining healthy habits, and 27% want information on reestablishing healthy habits. So thank you so much for participating in the poll. We'll have a couple more polls later on too, but let's get into our presentation here. So the basics of a healthy diet we want to cover too. So one, minimizing or eliminating simple sugars or high glycemic index foods. So some things that fit in that category are sweetened beverages, desserts, candies, processed foods, and things kind of like that. So if you can minimize or eliminate those, your diet is already becoming healthier. And then the next step that you can do is replace those foods with natural, whole foods that don't have a lot of processing. So that's water, nuts, meats, fruits, vegetables, beans, olive oil, and butter. So really, when you look at ingredient lists, the fewer ingredients in a food, the better. It means there's less processing that's happening, and meaning it's more healthy for your diet. And then three, this healthy diet, if you can create a supportive, healthy eating community around you, that's going to make it easier for you to keep on track with your goals. So involve your family, involve your friends, involve your care team or your doctors too, and then they can help keep you accountable, but also help support you with becoming a healthier eater and create a more lifelong goal. So some potential benefits of a healthy diet. There are studies that show that eating whole foods low in sugar have a positive impact on seizure control. And this is something I'm sure a lot of the audience has heard of, the ketogenic diet, which is a treatment for epilepsy. So this is even way scaled back from that. You don't have to be as extreme as the keto diet to see benefits for seizure control. Even just having a healthy diet just sets up your body in the best way possible to let your medication or your other treatments work as successfully as possible. And a healthier diet can have positive impacts on depression and anxiety and other conditions related to epilepsy as well. So helping eliminate some seizure triggers that might make it easier for seizures to pop up. And then for caregivers, so a lot of the audience, almost half of the audience are parents here. If you eat a healthy diet, it can help prevent illness for you, so you're in the best health to help support your children. It can increase your energy, and it can balance your mood as well. And as we kind of transition into the physical activity point, if you have a healthy diet, that helps fuel you to really reach your goals for physical activity as well. If you're not eating a very healthy diet, then that makes participating in physical activity or getting on a routine that much harder, because you might not have the energy to actually do it. So they're really connected, diet and physical activity. So some potential benefits of physical activity, and especially for individuals who have epilepsy and seizures, it can help with seizure control. It can help reduce some of the side effects of seizure medications because it's increasing your metabolic rate. Some mood problems or stress, just exercise in general can help reduce anxiety and stress. And exercise can help you get better sleep. And when you get better sleep, then you're helping remove that possible trigger of seizures, because you're getting nice, consistent, deep sleep. And then also, it can affect your cognition in a positive way. So it can help sharpen your memory. It can sharpen your attention, your senses, how you can think, and then just overall quality of life as well, because it can improve your bone health and strength, prevent or help promote your positive mental health, reduce risk of type 2 diabetes, reduces the risk of certain cancers. So there's a myriad of benefits for physical activity outside of those who have epilepsy, but even for those with epilepsy, can really help control some of those seizure triggers. So just some safety tips to think about. If you are exercising, or if you're thinking about starting an exercise routine, work with your doctors to first determine what's appropriate for you, what is possible, to make sure you're staying within your limits. Keep a medical alert information on you. So if you're at the gym or if you're on a trail or something like that, make sure you have information on how to help you if someone does find you and you are in the middle of a seizure. Exercise with a buddy when you can, or in a public place, so there are people around who can respond if they need to. So that kind of goes along with exercising in safe places. Use bike and park paths for running and biking instead of trying to do it along busy streets. Work out on soft surfaces if you are at risk for falls. Invest in high quality safety equipment. So buy that new bike helmet and not use a 10-year-old one. If you are participating in water activities, buy a high quality life vest. Just make smart decisions about the quality of your safety equipment. If you're exercising during the summer, avoid exercising during the hottest times of the day. So those late afternoon hours can help keep you cooler. Make sure you've got water with you so you're not becoming dehydrated, because that can also become a seizure trigger as well, not having enough water in you. And finally, use common sense about what is appropriate. Don't push your body too hard. Listen to your body too. And connecting that to our next slide here, making SMART goals. SMART in this case is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So The S, specific goals, make sure that it fits the goal that you are trying to achieve. So just saying, I want to increase my fitness is not very specific. And helping with that, making it measurable, saying, I want to increase my fitness. How are you going to measure that? So saying, I want to be able to run this amount of miles or walk this amount of miles is more measurable. And achievable, it should try and stretch you, but be realistic. So don't say, I want to run a marathon if you've never run a race before, or I want to lift 300 pounds and you've never weightlifted before. Find a number, or work with maybe some professionals to find what is a number that's realistic for you, but is not just, I want to be able to lift 2 pounds, when obviously a lot of us are able to do that too, and it's not really stretching you. And then relevant, make sure your goals are relevant to increasing your fitness in a realistic way or a results-based way, so you have a way to track it. And time bound. So say by September 1st or the end of the summer, I want to be able to run this race or lift this amount of weights or walk every day or something like that, instead of, I just want to do this, and then you don't quite have the same urgency for trying to follow your goals. If you don't have that deadline for you, it can really help. So I always think about goals in smart ways, and the SMART technique here, it can fit to any goal. It doesn't just have to be fitness goals, but in this case, that's kind of what we're talking about here. So now I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Nate Hendrickson. And Nate is the director of special needs at TNT Kids Fitness and Gymnastics. And he has a degree in health and physical education, and then also in developmental adapted physical education as well. So Nate, we're really excited to have you here today, and ready for you to take it away, your section.
Perfect. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be a part of this webinar. It's something that's dear to me as a physical educator and as a sibling, as a community support. And so I just want to first kind of give you a background about who I am and kind of where my experience is, so that as we share and converse later, hopefully it'll open you up. If you have questions later, you'll hopefully I'll be able to answer them based on what I share. So so my background, like I said, I'm a physical educator at heart, and with that, health is in there, and adaptive physical education. My passion and movement, I was a mover when I was a kid. I was a tree climber up in Roseau, Minnesota, and it taught me a lot playing in the woods and so forth. After that, I went into the Marine Corps, and what the military does, it breaks you down physically to develop you in all different types of areas. And I think we can take that same outlook as a human, as any individual, and just say, if movement is that important for military service, it should be something that we should probably consider about ourselves as well. So with that, my experience in movement, I worked in a therapeutic riding program. So we talk about the diverse abilities that I serve on an everyday basis right now. So I teach classes. My youngest kiddo is 3 months old. And through my time at TNT specifically, I've worked with individuals all the way into their geriatric stage of life. So my perspective is coming from infancy all the way through that geriatric stage of life. So when I say that movement is not just important for the human condition, it's vital for the human condition, it's because I've seen the every stage of it, and how important it is for each and every stage, and how it starts, how it's developed to its highest level, how it starts to regress, and then I've watched people start to take action to implement it back into their days. So that's one piece of it. And then the diverse ability as well. So we have ages. And so as a director of special needs on a non-COVID year, we have a collaboration with the area school districts. And, just last year, pre-COVID, we had 437 unique students coming through the districts that have special needs, to include those that have seizure disorders. And that would include individuals that, as oftentimes dual diagnosis. So that's cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, the gamut. And so with that, those seizure disorders that influence many different individuals. So, that's what I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to experience every day, is that diverse age and ability. And with that, all those different ages and abilities have unique stages, and they are ready for specific types of movement experiences as well. Okay. So with that, as we get into it later, please feel free to ask any questions. And so with that, just to piggyback what Eric said is, having those goals through movement. And I'd like to first start off at TNT is like, when we look at some of these unique individuals that come into our facility, there's two kind of common areas that we look at to have an influence. Because I should say, at TNT, we are a gymnastics-based organization. But we do have a Parkinson's class, a vets class. We have definitely special needs-based programming. So that's the type of movement, but we seek to adapt it and modify it specific to the individual's ability. Okay. So with that, we have two common perspectives is that we want to have an influence on through movement. Number one is just health and safety of an individual. And movement is vital for the human condition because it can support the health of a specific area, as well as improving the safety as well. So when we talk about that physical health, we're talking about the structure of the human body, the bones, the ligaments, the digestive system, the visual tracking. And then we also have body awareness systems, the vestibular and proprioceptive system. And we'll talk a little bit more of those specifically later. But yeah, we want to have a specific outcome on the physical nature of a human being. We also want to have an impact on cognition. When we have an individual that is capable of moving and navigating with their bodies, they naturally have more access to information. That information, it increases knowledge, it increases the need to process, remember, recall, and also synthesize information to new experiences. Okay, so through movement, we definitely seek to have an influence on the cognitive state of an individual at all stages of life. Okay. Secondly, social, or next one is social. When you talk about the social development of a human being, one of the greatest things we can ever do is having individuals that are aware of themselves. Okay, it starts there. So through movement, we can teach or help an individual acquire a true understanding of themselves, so that they probably have a greater perspective of who they are, which will naturally lead to greater engagement with others and environments, and so on and so forth. So the social health is something that is significantly supported through physical activity and movement. And then lastly, that emotional health. With this day and age, when there's a lot of individuals that live a sedentary life, and if an individual's seizures are inhibiting them at a greater level already, emotional and mental health can be at risk. And I think through movement, there's the endorphins, serotonin, all those great things that can support our self-esteem and our emotional state. So, and with that, when you talk about that safety, that safety is an emotional and physical safety that is part of what makes us human, and movement is definitely part of that. Okay, so that's one section. The other section that we want to help individuals realize that movement is applicable to three main areas of life. And number one is the more physically capable you are as an individual through your ability to think, move, and communicate in its simplest form, the more likely you're going to be independent in your daily living skills. So when I looked at that poll, we have some parents out there that are trying to have an influence on their kids. We have individuals that are trying to take care of themselves. So with that, if you're the parent side of it, ideally through movement, you are going to help support your child do their daily living tasks, dressing, hygiening, eating, some of those basic things, okay, as well as yourself. And the next area is we want people to enjoy life through a recreational base. Again, that's for you that's trying to do it for yourself, willing to put yourself out there in the community, in certain experiences that that allow you to really enjoy life. And for those parents, that can you find ways in which your child is going to be successful in a recreational setting, and recognize that recreational setting is to, yes, absolutely develop skill, physical, cognitive, social skills, so that again, they're happy, healthy individuals. Then the last area that we seek to have a goal through movement is simply, to be a productive member of society. Sometimes we have to have work, and that physical capacity helps us to do vocation. And when we think of vocation, we have the physical attributes that are needed to do work. We have the cognitive attributes that are going to be needed to remember a task, to follow through with a task, to repeat a task, all those good things, right? And then there's that social side of vocation, which means the ability to interact with others and take direction from others, and so on and so forth. So as you're thinking about setting these goals, try to think of, if you're perceiving your child, where do you want to take them to, right? And or if you are that person, where are you at right now, and where do you want to be, and recognize that gap. All right. So when you say, I want to have my child get to this stage, or I want to get to this stage as a person, you can understand understand increments that you have to take to get there. And with that, that's when we start talking about that understanding of, okay, once you understand where you want to go, now you have to start establishing where the foundation, then developing the habits, maintaining, and so forth. So that's the kind of dialogue that we want to kind of have tonight, and take you through. So with that, that's how you kind of create those goals. Okay, so let's, from a physical education standpoint, this model, I know may look crazy and whatnot to the naked eye, but as you look at this is the way in which we define what movement is, so that when you saw it, like, okay, I need to develop skills to be successful in daily living. I need to develop movement skills for recreation, or to be at my work. Okay, so when you think of those types of aspects of your life, you should kind of determine, okay, what movement skills do I need to have to be successful? So when you look at this wheel, that internal wheel, I'm not sure if you can read it, but it says non-manipulative, locomotor, and manipulative, right? Those are 3 categories of movement skills that we need to acquire in order to be our most contributing or successful in those daily life, recreational and vocational tasks. Okay. So with that, those are movement skills. Those are that's what it's all about. So to kind of give you a deeper snapshot of this, so a non-manipulative skill is simply the ability to turn, to twist, to roll, to balance, to transfer your weight from left foot to right foot, forward and backwards, right? It's your ability to jump and land, or stretch, or to curl down, right? So when you think of that, when you think of your vocation, or when you think of your exercise plans, or your fitness-based plans, or however you're going to feel that daily activity, I want you to pat yourself on the back when you're going to start that process, and you should be able to say, hey, I'm working on this non-manipulative based movement that is important. Okay, and that's one aspect. Okay, now we have this other aspect of movement that's in locomotion, which is simply walking, running, hopping, skipping, leaping, jumping. Okay, now I can't see you right now, but I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable at home as you're able. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to stand up right now. Stand up right in your place. Now there's this thing called plantar flexion and dorsiflexion of the foot. Okay, so as you're standing there, I want you to picture do this. So plantar flexion is the ability to push down through your toes. Okay, now if you're the parent, you got to be thinking about how this applies to your child as well. If you're starting at that very beginner age of movement. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. If you have somebody near you, it's even better, because now it's going to be awkward, right? So as you're going to get ready, I need you to jump as high as you can. right? Now, if you're in an apartment, don't shake it too much, but the goal is I want you to jump as high as you can without using plantar flexion, which is the ability that pushing through your toes. So I want you to jump as high as you can without pushing through your toes, right? So in ready, 3, 2, 1, go. All right. So I don't know if you did it or not, but here's what I want you to have a quick seat here. And I just want you to understand that all of these movement skills that are part of this have a progression, right? And with that, if those of you that tried it, you probably felt a little awkward or confused, maybe is the better statement. You're like, well, how can I jump as high as I can if I can't push through my toes, right? And that's exactly right. You know, when you start this process of developing movement skills or fitness or whatever, you just got to remember, where's the base of it? Where do I need to go? Because ultimately the ability to walk, run, hop, skip, leap, jump, somersault comes through the ability to push through your toes and finish through your toes. Okay. So when you're starting to set those goals and start creating that thing, is just recognize, hey, sometimes you got to go to the most fundamental element of some of these skills. Okay. So yeah, you know, we got locomotor skills, and then we also have the manipulative based skills. So throwing, catching, collecting, gathering, punting, kicking, and all that stuff. Again, one of the most foundational things we can understand is that in order to throw something, you got to be able to grasp it. Okay, you got to be able to release it. So if you're one of those kiddos, a parent, that's what you're trying to develop, is some of those fundamental movement skills, and just realize sometimes we got to take it down to the most basic levels. Okay, so when you talk about those skills, then this model that's in front of you, it's a pinwheel. All right. So what you ultimately do is you say, okay, you cut out the middle circle or middle section where it has those arrows, and then you can twist it, because it says that, okay, I have these different movement skills, but to be efficient in daily living, recreational, and vocational based life, I may have to do these movement skills variably. Okay, and those are those concepts. And so, Eric, if you want to jump ahead to the next slide, and this will be broken down. So, so to catch back up, these are lists of the locomotor skills. So when you think of, you can take these and you can say, yeah, this applies to sport, it applies to recreation, it applies to daily living. Because I could ask you, how many of you did a locomotor skill today? 90% of you are going to say, yep, I walked, I ran, I hopped, I skipped, I leaped, depending how excited you were this morning to get dressed or get to the shower, right? How many of you did some type of non-manipulative skill? 90 to 100% of you have done that already. You've had to bend, twist, turn, or whatnot to reach down, open up a drawer, right? And then you've also done some type of a manipulative skill just to be involved in the day, which is grasping something out of the drawer, whether that's clothing, a utensil, or whatnot. Okay, so that's a recap on those fundamental movement skills. Like they're imperative to what we do every day. And if we understand those, we're more likely to appreciate the physical activity that we are going to either attempt to do, or the exercises or physical activity that we're going to do to support our efficiency in those. Okay, so good deal here. Next slide. So I know this is a little bit scrambly, but so now when we understand the movement skills, we have to understand that movement skills have to be done variably, because life isn't just one way of doing things, right? So that's when we talk about that variation of effort, right? We have to be able to do things fast, and we have to do things slow. We have to do them with strong light forces. We have to be able to start and stop, and we also have to be able to continue. So when you look at that chart on the left-hand side, that kind of defines, the effort of movement that we have to be capable and confident in. Okay. We also have to be able to be aware of our space in which that movement's doing, to include how to perform in our own space, how to work in general space. We have to understand variable directions: up, down, forward, backwards, right, left, clockwise, counterclockwise. We talk about the levels. We have to be able to do things at a high level, reaching up to things. We have to go down to things. We have to go do things in a straight line. We have to go around things. We have to go back and forth in life. And we have to go large and small, near and far. Okay. So when you think of those movements, yeah, that's what we want to do, is do things spatially and effort wise. Then also relationship wise. And part of that comes down to is, we're talking about that self-awareness, right? So when we move, we have implications on movement as it relates to how our own body parts move. And do we have to twist? Do we have to become wide to fill a space? Do we have to become narrow to go through a space, right? Do we have to work in an asymmetrical or symmetrical based pattern? We have to be able to relate with objects and people, right? We have to go over things, under things. We have to go maybe on people and off people too. You never know, right? But we have to be able to come near and far to things. And so I won't read all those out, but when you think of movement, there's a lot of necessity for us to be physically active. And this Graham's Fitness Wheel allows you to understand the variable movement skills as well as the variable concepts those skills have to be done in. And hopefully that will guide you in your choice to become more physically active or to instill and or create movement as a foundation of building skill. Okay. So that's why I wanted to share that with you. That's how we define movement and concepts of movement. Okay. Sound good? All right. So with that, we have these kind of stages, and what I alluded to earlier is that we have individuals that are in that building the foundation, right? So yes, you might be a parent that is trying to build that foundation for your child, as well as maybe now that you are trying to do it for yourself. Maybe you didn't have access to build the foundation previously for whatever reasons. Hopefully some of this dialogue that we're going to share tonight will give you an understanding of what can be built and what you're going to try to establish everything off of. And then we have some of you that already stated that you're trying to develop the habits. We have to then understand, what does it take to maintain the habits, right? And also for those of you that need to reestablish them. And so wherever we're at on this process, you just have to accept where you're at. And let me just make sure I'm on the right track here. Yeah. Yep. So that's what we're going to talk about, this next evolution of where we're going. So good to go. Next. All right. So from a foundational standpoint, here's a couple things that, when I think of just the physical nature, and that's where I'm kind of going to focus on right now, is just that the physical nature of us. Now, with my experience working with this diverse population and with some individuals that I've been fortunate to work with that have a seizure disorder specifically, I believe movement does support the body awareness. Especially at some of this young age, they're typically, or not say always typically, but what I have seen in the past is, sometimes these kids they move fast, but they're not always in control. Okay. And, I don't have a poll for it, but there's two body systems that are oftentimes overlooked as it relates to understanding how we perform as a human being. So, excuse me. We take in information through our senses: our sight, our sound, our taste, our touch, our smell. Okay, those are the 5 senses that we're typically hear of. Now we have 2 other body systems that are really important to understand. And in this PowerPoint, I do have a link to a couple videos. It's like 5 minutes each that hopefully will kind of give you a higher insight. It's a little bit more on the child side, but I think you can definitely transition them in and or search how it applies to older ages of individuals and whatnot. But in a brief snapshot, the vestibular system. So inside our ears, we have follicles, right? And then that fluid in our ear, as we tilt side to side or whatnot, our inner ear is feeling that vestibular change, simply meaning when there's a change in gravity, okay? So we have one aspect that our inner ear tells us when we are off of our midline. Midlines, we're here, we're on the side, and then we're cut in half. So anytime we are twisting, rolling, bending, and turning, our inner ear senses it, Okay, so one of the first things we have to do is to create the awareness in that inner ear when we are off balance. Um, so in youth, we want to establish that awareness, and then in the geriatric populations, we might have to reestablish that, or that. I'm 42. I'll be 42 next week, right? But even right now, I still have to engage in that bending, turning, twisting, rolling. So as I advance in age, when I have a slip on the ice or I stub my toe on a rock, I feel that change. I'm aware of that vestibular change. And then that second piece is then we establish the musculature to correct our body position in space. Okay. So with that, why is gymnastics specifically a really great thing for kids to be involved in is there's a lot of that non-manipulative skill. So if I were to ask you guys, ladies at home, right now, I want you to tilt to your right, okay? So, sorry. Yeah. So we're going backwards here, but so tilt to your right. Now, what your ear is saying is, oh, I'm off to the right. Now, what muscle group does your brain say to get back upright? Well, it speaks to your left obliques, okay? So when we ask kids to flip, roll, turn, twist, or bend, and or as yourself, when you start developing those physical activity side of it, when you force yourself to bend down and pick up weights, right? Or to whatever exercise plan you make, you are trying to challenge that vestibular system because ultimately, if you lean forward, your back muscles engage, right? If you lean backwards, your frontal abdominals, and then any lateral movement left or right, we're trying to incorporate our obliques. So ultimately, if you're aware of the vestibular system, it's the inner ears that tell you when you're off a midline, and the more you stimulate that, the more likelihood you're going to have the muscle engagement in the core to become upright and balanced, right? And one of those things that I've seen over the years is, especially with youth, is parents become scared or nervous about their children moving. They're always scared they're going to fall, right? Right. So, yes, you could have the fall because of the seizure that's happening, of course, but you also have just general movement in which they may be more at risk for moving too fast and then not being able to correct their posture. Okay. So that's why we want to engage that vestibular system to flipping, rolling, turning, twisting, and bending. Now, if you, so when we have kids that come in that have a seizure disorder, we are always going to converse with that specific school district or pediatrician or parent, whoever it might be, and say, what level of either turning, twisting, or bending is this individual able to tolerate without the risk of additional seizures? So those are things that we do ask. So, just like Eric had alluded to earlier, you just got to do things safely, of course. So you just got to fall within the limits of or the guidelines that are healthy to you and or the child that you're supporting. Fair enough. So that's the vestibular system. Now, one more aspect of the vestibular system, it also acts as a traffic cop in your brain, right? So we talked about all those other systems: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. That vestibular system works as a traffic cop in your brain to help an individual assess, analyze, and then ultimately put that information into an order so that they're not overwhelmed. Okay. The other aspect of a foundation is to establish proprioceptive awareness and its application as well. So proprioception, the way I like to describe it is it's either push or pull on a body part that helps that individual recognize what body part is and what's happening to it. Okay. And usually these two body systems go hand in hand. An example is, you're walking on a hard surface and then you step onto a soft surface. It could be grass, right? And that increase of falling goes up. So what happens from a proprioceptive standpoint is there's less pressure that's going into the foot, right? That less pressure causes a vestibular change, and they're either hitting the floor, or if that person's awareness within their foot as well as their ear get it, the more likelihood they're going to adjust the musculature necessary to stay upright and balanced. Whether it's recruiting the muscle group to take that extra step forward, or it's that oblique or that back muscle that says, hey, let's correct ourselves. Okay? So through movement, that's one thing that we're trying to always address, is to establish that we are vestibularly proprioceptively aware and capable. The other aspect of the proprioceptive system, especially as it relates to youth, is appropriateness of touch. That would be an example, right? Or when you talk about the vocational tasks of writing in your classroom, or with whiteboards or zipping coats. It's kind of like from an OT perspective, if you will. You know, there's appropriate pressure that has to be applied to a specific object, whether that's a pen, a pencil, a zipper. Maybe it's the child's ability to differentiate between how to squeeze a carrot versus something softer, right? So through movement, we establish that body awareness in vestibular and proprioceptive systems. Okay. And if you guys have any questions on that later, please annotate it now, and we can always talk about it later. Okay. So establishing the body functions. So part of the human being is understand how the joints move in order to be our most productive self in all those movement skills. Ultimately, we're trying to make sure that our joints are staying active, which means taking them through. If you have a ball and socket joint to the shoulder, hinge joint, all our different joints, just recognize that part of movement is to ensure that that joint has its full capacity of range of motion and its ability to move through that pattern of movement. Okay. Then one of the biggest things I believe is the most important that we establish as a foundation through movement is simply muscular strength. Now, if I were to ask the majority of you, when you close your eyes, what picture comes to mind when you think of muscular strength? Okay. And based on my experience, a lot of you probably have this picture of a bodybuilder or some type of weightlifter. They're picking up this big old barbell. And I'd like to have you consider that as a way to think about it, but I also need you to understand that, you know, wherever you are or your child is, you have to understand muscular strength as it applies to the muscle group that is needed to perform a specific task, right? So for some individuals, you know, if you have an individual that has epilepsy and they have cerebral palsy, you might be just hypertonia. You might be looking at just that muscular strength in that within the grip in the hand, right? To an individual that is very motorically capable, and now you're looking at muscular strength as a global perspective as it relates. How does every muscle group work together, right? So when you think of muscular strength, then when you establish muscular strength in a group, now you start to ask, you know, how much endurance can I have? Which means the ability to repeat it. Okay, and the more likely you can repeat and create the endurance within a muscle group, the more capable you are, again, in the three aspects of our life, as well as you're naturally going to start to have a better influence on your health and safety. We want to have an understanding of what is our current cardiovascular current ability, and or where do we have to go. Have an influence on our cardiovascular system. Find that right level of exercise that you know, meets you where you're at. I'm not sure if many of you are. I'm sure some of you do know about that target heart rate. So when you talk about that exercising safely and whatnot, you know, find that right target heart rate, and you know, if your ability is subjected to, you know, talking to your doctors or whatnot, if heart rate gets to a certain level, are you more at risk or less at risk? So if you need to help finding that specific target heart rate as it relates to staying safe, please converse with your doctors and whatnot. But ultimately, cardiovascular health is super important. Flexibility, you know, we want to have an influence on flexibility and mobility of a joint. One is because it supports efficient movement, as well as it reduces injury. Okay. And the other aspect that we think about from a foundation is, you know, are we trying to have an impact on body composition? Do we have a muscle to adipose tissue rate that is healthy, that BMI index, if you will? How do you have an influence on there? You know, the big thing though, you know, I don't want anybody to ever chase a number of weight. You know, I think if you not say chase, but you seek to achieve functionality and understand functionality of movement, body composition will naturally get to where it needs to be for you. Okay, you know, I think a lot of people chase a weight number, and my own personal opinion is that let's chase functionality. Let's chase contribution to life. Let's chase independence in life. That should be our overarching goal, and naturally, I think we'll have a better influence on how we look at body composition. So, with that, when you think of that foundation, that's something to to consider. Okay. All right. So we have a little poll here. Now, Eric, do you have those questions to pull up? Or you got a couple questions here for you. So when you think of this, what best describes you or the person you are supporting? Take a quick moment. Safely able to move and has a healthy routine, safely able to start a movement or routine. It needs to build fitness in order to move safely. Needs to build fitness from scratch in order to complete daily activities. So if you take a quick little moment, kind of see where everybody's at. I get to see the numbers as they pop up, so that's why I'm getting so close. Okay. Okay, perfect. So we have 54%. Oh. Did you finish it? Okay. Okay, we good, Eric? We can probably close it up now. I think we got everybody. So what we found is that of everybody chiming in, 50% of you are safely able to move and has a healthy routine. Okay, so with that, no excuses now, half of you. Just kidding. Yeah, so that's great to hear. That means that you guys are ready to kind of start off on, okay, let's talk about the habits, and that's where we're gonna go to next. Another 36% are able to start a movement routine. Perfect. And for those of you that needs to build fitness in order to move safely. Okay. We're going to get to all of you, and hopefully by the end of this, we are going to have an impact on all those numbers. Okay. And then so we have somebody that yours here to build it from scratch. So let's tear into the next thing. Here we go. So yeah, the next thing is, how do you start establishing those habits? So when I think of that habit, like who's responsible? Who's got to be on this team, right? So with that, is it yourself? You got to hold yourself accountable. You're the one that has to do the research, the finding of appropriateness or the types of things that you want to establish, right? So that's on you yourself, and for yourself. If you're the caregiver, okay. We have the caregiver. You're there to help support that individual in creating their habits of movement and eating. The professional, how are you sharing? How are you supporting and sharing knowledge to support either the self or the caregiver? Okay. Then you got to determine where are you going to do it? You have to choose. Like, can you do it at home? Is there a community-based organization or option for you in which you're going to do it? Are you going to be reliant on a school, for instance, or a preschool to start developing some of those foundations or habits in movement? That's the biggest thing. Then you got to ask yourself, in order to have an impact on that goal and then progression, you have to ask yourself, are you going to make time to do it? Okay, so here's something to do, because ultimately, in order to acquire skill as a human being, it takes repetition, and you have to find out that frequency of that repetition so that you can stay on point. So here we go. Ready? Let's try something with me. Ready? Thumbs up. Just like this. Ready? Thumbs up. And once you go thumbs down, then pointers out, then pointers in, thumbs up, thumbs down, pointers out, pointers in, thumbs up, thumbs down, pointers out, pointers in. Simple, right? We got 2 body parts really, and then 4 directions. But now I'm going to speed it up for you. I'm going to ask you, you got to go a little faster here. I'm going to cut out some of the verbs. Okay, so ready? Thumbs up, thumbs down, pointers out, pointers in. Thumbs up, thumbs down, pointers out, pointers in. Thumbs, pointers, switch, switch, switch. Thumbs and pointers, thumbs and pointers, thumbs and pointers, thumbs. Okay, so you can see where I landed now? Okay, so for some of you, I'm guessing you felt kind of awkward, like, wah, if you were trying, right? So now I want you to have one last thing. I want you to do 1 thumb and one pointer. Just say this, ready? And I want you to switch, 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 right? So what I want you to take away from that, motivators, is this. The only way we acquire skill is through repetition, right? And for some of you that were trying, I'm guessing you felt awkward and vulnerable. Probably, if I was watching, you'd be even more vulnerable. So with that, when you feel vulnerable or awkward, right, slow yourself down, right? Find out, where do you got to get to? What's that first repetition that you got to get to build on to the next thing? Because I'm telling you what, before I got to this, I had to get coordinated with my thumbs and my pointers. So that's the big thing, is developing those habits. Go back. What's the foundation? And what do I have to, who do I have to have with me? Who do I have to have on board? Where do I have to do it? And then how frequent do I got to get there? Okay. And that's the essence of developing a habit, right? So yeah, that's the essence of it. And a quick little poll. We don't have a lot of time left, but let's hit one more quick poll for you. Okay. So with that, where do you envision building that habit, right? And utilizing your healthy movement routine? Are you planning on doing it at home, at a school, at a workplace, parks, trails, gyms, community? Where do you think you are going to be able to develop that healthy movement and physical activity? Right? And on the other one is, how confident are you in your access and safe utilization in these spaces? Okay. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. You got everybody, Eric? All right. So here, I'm gonna be real, motivators. Home is great. Home can have some distractions too, right? So when you think of where you're going to utilize this and whatnot, think about, when you think of whether it's at school or home or the workplace or parks and trails, think of those things that may inhibit you from maintaining it, right? Which we're going to talk to next, as well as what are those things that may inhibit you from developing the full habit, so that you are ready to put forth the effort to overcome that problem when it does occur, or if it does occur. Because I'm hoping that based on this conversation tonight, that you do value physical activity and healthy eating as a substantial part of what's going to give you the greatest opportunity in life. So there's that. Now with that, it's awesome to see that like 70% of you are super confident, or very confident. There's confidence, and then there's neutral. Okay. With that, no matter where you are, sometimes that confidence is, be confident, but then don't be afraid to push yourself a little bit too. Okay. Don't be afraid to become neutral or confident. It's something new, because when we challenge ourselves, that's growth. That's growth. And that's what life is all about, is being able to challenge ourselves and the people around us. So, all right. Now with that, we're talking about maintaining that habit. Hey, you always got to look in the mirror every day. You got to appreciate your commitment. You got to appreciate the efforts of the individuals that are putting forth for your child, whether that's yourself, the nanny, the school, whoever it is. Appreciate the commitment to the health and wellness of you yourself and or your child. You got to be able to accept the increments. They may be slow, right? But you got to raise yourself up and give those things those specific, hey, we're getting there. We're getting there. And understand, if that increment isn't getting there at a certain time, what can you do about it? What can you do differently? What can you be? Who do you have to leverage yourself with? So accept the increments. And lastly, you got to recognize those results and how they make you feel, and how they make the person that you're supporting feel, right? That's the big thing, right? So that when you get into that, when you in that maintaining phase, and now all of a sudden you have to reestablish, Eric. So if you want to jump into that next one, right? About reestablishing, just reconnect with the why. Is it for my health and safety? Is it for my quality of life, right? And what needs to be reestablished? My foundations and my habits, right? That's really what it comes down to. And, and it's, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but ultimately physical activity and nutrition are vital for the human condition. to be our most impactful self and independent self. And so with that, I'm definitely open for any questions, Eric. I think if we're at that time, yeah. So love to hear any questions, or if you guys have any comments or whatnot.
Nate, thank you so much for all of that awesome material and information. I think it's really helpful way to look at physical activity. It's just breaking it down to movement as opposed to these lofty goals of running races or lifting weights or things like that. It just simplifies things. So we do have some questions that came in. One of them is, looks like they're trying to break it down. I've been thinking about starting with a personal trainer. What might be some benefits for working with a trainer?
That personal trainer, they might be able to, well, first of all, do a health assessment. So they're going to be able to, like, if you feel vulnerable in choosing the right things, they're going to be able to do an assessment on your current physical state, physical health, and they're going to help you align with the specific movements and the specific repetition scheme and progression of things, that sometimes it's nice for you not to have to think about it, right? Sometimes going to that personal trainer will help you establish what you have to think about and how you need to get there, so that if you ever have to do it on your own, at least you've built that foundation. And as well as, they're going to give you ways to, here's the base of it, and then they can also help you deconstruct or construct variations of it so you can find that success. So if you're tired, lethargic, or sore or whatnot, you're going to be able to build that platform, if that answers your question.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. And reminder to everyone too, please feel free to add questions as we're in this section right here. Another one is, I live in a studio apartment. What are some adaptations for a kind of a movement routine that I can do inside in my small space?
Okay, so with that, are you on a second floor by chance? And if so, do you have to worry about making too much noise? Do you have to worry about distracting others in the apartment? So that'll kind of give you one thing, right? But you recognize, what can you move around? So some things, right? Let's look at just basic locomotion, right? It's the ability to develop strength in our feet. So you can do calf raises on things. You can do squats. You can do, if you're not worried about making noise, you can set up jumping, landing activities. How can you find different ways in which you push on things? So we talk about that pushing based movement. That's foundational. What can you push? Whether, like, hey, if you can be upside down and do handstands on the wall, go for it, right? And or if you are using a wall to do modified push-ups, that's available to you. You can use countertops to modify that pushing aspect. So when you think about the functionality, why do we have to push? Well, that's for if I do fall, I have the muscular strength in my chest and my triceps to make sure I can bear the weight as I fall. Okay. So when you think of, in your apartment, what space do you have? Right. And then what is the functional things that you're trying to achieve through movement? Right. And that should be able to help you say, okay, how do I get my heart rate up? How do I create strength? How do I create endurance? And then how do I actually develop a specific skill of movement, which is, do I have to establish a bending and twisting and a turning? Do I have to create locomotive skills, right? Do I have to create a manipulative based skill? So, so yeah, if you have confined spaces, you just got to be creative, right?
Right.
And just work on the parameters that you have, and that's what you got.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's one about, or sounds like from a parent. What
Okay.
tips do you have about motivating your kids to stay on a routine when sometimes they're a little resistant to being committed to what what they're thinking is the best plan for them?
By chance, Eric, do they have an age in there?
No, but let's say 10 years old as
10
kind
years
of
old.
yeah.
Okay. When I think of over the years, my process for supporting an individual through movement is, number one is I have to recognize who they are as an individual. Okay. I have to understand what is their current physical, cognitive, social, emotional ability. And from there, I have to try to understand is how do I support them through movement, but meeting them where they're at, right? So when you talk about that middle schooler or that upper elementary age, they're still trying to figure out their directionality in life, you know? So with that, how do you connect purpose to the movement, right? And, with that can be tricky at that age. The big thing is, how do you um, make it known to them, like, hey, this is, this is the benefits of it. This is how, hey, is it enjoyable, right? So that's one of those tricky things, is like, I think it was alluded to, is like, hey, I'm not asking you to do P90X, for instance, right? Hey, let's get out and walk. Let's get out and run. Let's get out and roll. Whatever it is, see if you can kind of create them part of it, right? I think with all of us, right, when we have choice and we have influence in the decision, right, we're more likely to gravitate to it. Now, if they're in school, maybe it's you leverage other professionals. Sometimes here's the deal. I have a 6 and 8-year-old. You know what? Sometimes I don't have the influence that I'd like to have on my own kids, right? So how do you leverage that professional? How do you leverage that other friend? How do you leverage that other person that may have a deeper influence in that individual's social perspective, to build willingness to move or participate? I don't have fairy dust. I wish I did. But number one is consider the individual, right? Not and then in that consideration, then you can kind of understand is why they may be reluctant or are hesitant to participate. We think of some of these kids I've seen over the years. A young man that I used to work with, he was on medications, right? So he had increased body mass, right? So if I asked the individual that had increased body mass to perform in front of peers, naturally they're going to feel vulnerable, and that shutdown may happen. So sometimes it's who they're working with or who they're performing in front of, and it's not the movement itself. Yeah, the movement might be difficult, but it's the social restrictor that inhibits them the most. So just realize these kiddos, people are complex, but if you appreciate who they are and you can kind of respect it, okay, they're vulnerable, they hurt, right? Things like that. And I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, but with especially that middle school, upper teenage year, or the teenage years, that upper elementary, when they're trying to define themselves as well. So you got hormones and all that good stuff. Just let them know that you see them and you appreciate them, and if you find ways in which they can be part of the process and or leverage the social aspect. That'd be my words of encouragement for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. That was a great answer. And then finally, kind of last question that I've got, but I think it applies to everyone too. What's something that I can do, or our audience, just tonight when we sign off, that can lead us kind of to a healthy exercise or movement routine? What's something simple we can do right away?
Something simple is, it's as simple as getting up and getting to build on one thing. So if it's you get up tomorrow morning, or before you go to bed, you drink a big glass of water, right? It can be as simple as that. Find one thing that you can repeat, right? And when you've repeated it, then just add one more thing, right? Mm-hmm. So depending on where you're at as an individual, sometimes we have this belief that we have to make change now, right? But ultimately that, oftentimes we fall short of that expectation. And so I encourage you guys to be respectful to yourself and or the person that you do, and just say, hey, it can be incremental, and start out with the little things and then repeat the little things. Do those well, and naturally I think that progression comes. So when you talk about establishing healthy eating, healthy movements and all that stuff, it doesn't have to be exhaustive, right? It can be, hey, let's choose one vegetable a week, a new vegetable, or hey, we're gonna try to put one vegetable on a plate every night, whatever it might be. But just be respectful to yourself, and understand that it's hard sometimes, right? But if you can build on each thing, we'll go from there. So And ask
Right.
questions.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. And yeah, before I kind of finish off the webinar, I definitely want to thank Nate again for being here and sharing all this wonderful information. So Nate, thank you so much for
Yeah,
taking the
absolutely.
time and being here tonight.
Yes, thank you guys so
All right.
much.
All right, so let me just finish off here. So at the Epilepsy Foundation, we lead the fight to overcome the challenges of living with epilepsy and to accelerate therapies to stop seizures, find cures, and save lives. And so you just being here tonight is definitely helping with some of those pieces too, and just creating a safer world for those who live with epilepsy and for them to be able to be more successful. And definitely want to highlight tonight our information services at EFMN. We provide free one-on-one support to anybody who has questions related to epilepsy, but we have customized tools and resources to help with anything from various treatments to doctor referrals to questions about employment, questions about new studies or transportation, anything like that. We're happy to help however we can. And we have a bunch of materials that we can send your way too. So you can find that information on our website underneath information services. And that is my contact information as well. If you want to reach out directly to me, if you think a question hits you overnight that you think Nate would be perfect to answer, I can send it his way and hopefully get you a response for that too. And I definitely recommend or invite you to attend our next Wellness Wednesday webinar at the end of May on the 26th. The topic is emotional health and stress management, and the guest speaker for that session is going to be Kay King, who's with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, if you've heard of that organization. And so you can find information about that on our website calendar, but we'd love to have you join for that webinar as well. So these are the references for some of the info that we used today, but I want to thank everyone once again for attending tonight. The recording for this webinar will be available on our website probably within the next couple of weeks as we get it formatted and put up on our website. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great, I guess May is coming up here, so great spring, and stay safe out there and reach out to EFMN for any questions that you might have. So thanks again and have a great night.